The world of Valora had always been a place of peace. Its skies were painted in gentle shades of silver and blue, with two suns that bathed the land in soft light. The Valorans, tall and graceful, were known across the nearby systems for their intelligence and harmony. They had never built great armies, nor had they trained for war. Their strength was knowledge. Their pride was creation. For centuries, they believed wisdom alone would shield them from danger. But wisdom was not enough against the Drexen Dominion. The Drexens were ruthless conquerors. Their ships cut through the stars like blades, swallowing world after world. They did not come for friendship. They came for control, and now, their eyes were set on Valora. The Valorans had tried everything before the war began. They offered trade, they offered resources, even technology that could have benefited the Drexens. But the Dominion wanted only one thing: submission. When Valora refused, the skies burned. The first attack shattered their defense fleets in less than an hour. Their shining cities trembled as fire rained from orbit. For the first time in living memory, Valorans felt fear that knowledge could not erase. Their leaders gathered in the Hall of Harmony, a great crystal chamber that once echoed with laughter and debate. Now it echoed with panic. Counselor Elira stood at the center. She was calm, but her long fingers trembled as she pressed them against the glowing control sphere. Around her, voices argued, each one rising louder. "They will destroy us," cried one counselor. "We must surrender," shouted another. "Surrender means slavery," argued a third. Elira raised her hand. "Silence." Her voice cut through the storm of fear. "We knew this day might come. That is why we built the transmitter." The chamber fell quiet. All eyes turned toward the great machine at the far end of the hall. It was old, older than their recorded history. The transmitter had been discovered deep within the mountains, carved into stone that predated Valoran civilization. It was said to be a relic left behind by travelers from beyond the stars. No one knew how it truly worked, only that it could send a message farther than any of their ships could travel. For centuries it had remained untouched. Until now. Elira's voice was steady, though her heart raced. "We will send a plea, not just to nearby systems, not just to our allies. We will send it across the galaxy. Somewhere someone must hear us. Somewhere someone will answer." The council exchanged nervous glances. It was a desperate plan, almost foolish. Who would come to their aid? And even if someone heard, how could they arrive before the Drexens finished their conquest? But desperation left no other choice. The Valorans prepared the transmitter. Its ancient machinery rumbled as if awakening from a long sleep. Sparks of light shimmered through the chamber and a deep hum filled the air. The machine pulsed like a heart, ready to carry their words into the unknown. Elira stepped forward. Her voice was soft, yet filled with all the sorrow of her people. "To whoever hears this message, we are the people of Valora. We are under attack by the Drexen Dominion. We are not soldiers. We are not strong. But we wish to live. We wish to survive. If you hear us, please help us. Save us." The words echoed through the hall, and then the machine released a blinding wave of energy. The message was gone, carried on streams of light into the endless stars. For a moment, silence returned. Some counselors bowed their heads in despair. Others closed their eyes, whispering quiet prayers. They knew the odds. Even if the message was heard, who would risk themselves against the Dominion? Days passed. On Valora, the war only grew worse. Drexen ships prowled the skies. Villages on the outer continents were reduced to rubble. Families fled underground, hiding in caverns while their once proud towers crumbled above. The Valorans had never known such hopelessness. Their inventions, their knowledge, all seemed useless against the firepower of their enemy. Every morning, Elira returned to the transmitter, waiting for a signal. None came. The hope that had carried her people began to wither. The council whispered of surrender again, voices heavy with despair. Then one night the transmitter pulsed. It was faint at first, just a flicker of light across its surface. The technicians gasped and rushed forward. The hum grew louder, stronger. Energy flowed through the ancient circuits as if the machine itself had been awakened by the reply. Elira hurried to the controls. Her hands trembled as she touched the glowing sphere. Is someone answering?" The lights flared and the chamber filled with a strange sound. A voice, rough, deep, unlike any Valoran tongue, echoed from the machine. It spoke slowly, each word clear. "We are humans. We heard your call. We are coming." The chamber fell silent. Every Valoran froze, staring at one another. Humans? None of them had ever heard of such a species. No records, no history, no mention in their libraries. They knew nothing of these beings, humans, whispered one counselor. What are they? Where do they come from? Illyra's heart pounded. The voice was not gentle, not polished like the speech of Valora. It was hard, almost sharp. Yet within those words was something powerful, something alive. It was not the tone of diplomats or scholars. It was the tone of those who had walked through fire and refused to fall. Some counselors cheered in relief. We are saved, they cried. Others shook their heads uneasy. We know nothing of these humans. What if we have summoned danger greater than the Drexens? Illyra said nothing. She stared at the transmitter, her thoughts a storm. She had begged for aid and someone had answered. Not an empire she knew, not an ally she trusted. Strangers, beings from the dark unknown, yet they had heard, and they were coming. Outside, the night sky burned with the light of Drexen warships circling in orbit. The Valorans watched from their shelters, their faces filled with fear, but now there was something else in their hearts, something fragile yet powerful. Hope. No one knew what these humans were. No one knew if they could stand against the Dominion. But they had answered when no one else had. And in the darkest hour of Valora's history, that was enough. The Valorans whispered to one another as the night stretched on. The humans are coming. The words spread from city to city, from cavern to cavern. Like a spark, they ignited in every heart. Hope had returned. And far beyond Valora, across the endless stars, ships began to move. The humans were coming. The days after the reply were filled with tension. The Valorans repeated the strange words over and over. We are humans. We are coming. Yet no one knew what humans truly were. No books mentioned them. No star charts showed their worlds. Some said they must be wanderers drifting through the galaxy. Others feared they were conquerors worse than the Drexens. Still, the hope remained. For the first time since the war began, the Valorans looked to the sky not with despair, but with waiting hearts. Waiting for the unknown counselor, Illyra stood at the high balcony of the Hall of Harmony, gazing at the night sky. The Drexen warships still circled above like predators. Their massive silhouettes blocked out the stars, their weapons ready to strike at any moment. She whispered softly, Humans. Who are you? Behind her, other council members debated endlessly. We cannot trust them, one said. What if they come to claim Valora for themselves? Asked another. And yet, said Illyra, they answered when no one else did. That must mean something. The Valorans had no choice. Their fleets were in ruins, their defenses shattered. If the humans came with ill intent, resistance would be impossible. But if they came as allies, there might still be hope. The days dragged on. The people grew restless, wondering if the humans were truly on their way, or if the message had been nothing more than empty words. Then, one dawn, the sky changed. The human ships at first. The Drexen sentries noticed it. Sudden ripples of light at the edge of the system, like stones tossed into a still pond. A fleet was arriving. Valoran observers rushed to the viewing platforms. Through their telescopes, they saw shapes emerging from the void, dark, angular, and scarred. Human ships. They were not shining vessels of elegance like Valoran transports. Nor were they vast, imposing fortresses like Drexen warships. They looked practical. Their hulls were patched with armor of different shades, some pieces clearly salvaged from old battles. Many bore scars, blackened lines where weapons had struck but failed to destroy. To Valoran eyes, they seemed fragile compared to Drexen might. Yet there was something unsettling about them. They looked like predators, not because of their size, but because of the intent in their design. They are not beautiful, whispered a Valoran scientist. No, Illyra said, watching carefully. They are built to endure. The Drexens, however, did not hesitate. Their ships shifted formation, ready to attack the newcomers. First impressions as the human fleet approached, a message burst across the Valoran transmitters. The voice was strong, firm, and direct. This is the United Terran Fleet. We received your distress call. Valora, we are here. The words spread like fire. Citizens across the underground shelters and shattered cities repeated them with relief. They came. The humans came. But the Valoran Council still trembled with unease. These beings were strangers. Their ships were strange. Their voices were hard. Moments later, smaller craft broke away from the main fleet and descended toward Valora's surface. A landing had begun. The first meeting, in the wide plaza outside the Hall of Harmony, Valoran guards and council members gathered nervously. The ground shook as the human dropships descended, their engines roaring. Dust filled the air before the ship's doors opened. From within, the humans stepped out. The Valorans gasped softly. The newcomers were shorter than Drexens, shorter even than most Valorans. Their bodies seemed fragile, with soft skin, no scales, no claws, no natural armor. They wore heavy suits of dark material, plates of metal over their chests and arms. Strange weapons hung at their sides. At first glance, they looked weak compared to the towering Drexens. But then the Valorans saw their eyes. The human soldiers looked around with sharp, unblinking focus. Their movements were precise, efficient, almost cold. Their eyes carried no fear, only readiness. It was not the look of scholars or merchants. It was the look of those who had lived through battles and survived. Elira stepped forward, her voice careful. "You are the humans?" A man removed his helmet. His face was scarred, his jaw set. He looked at Elira directly without hesitation. "Yes," he said simply. "I am Captain Marcus Hale of the Terran Fleet. We heard your plea. We are here to fight." The word sent a ripple through the Valorans. To them, war was something distant, something avoided. Yet this man spoke of it as though it were as natural as breathing. Elira tried to steady her voice. "You came knowing the Drexen Dominion waits above. Do you understand their strength?" Marcus's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "We understand. We've fought worse." The debate that night, the council held a meeting with the human commanders. Valoran counselors asked endless questions. Why come for us? What do you want in return? What drives your people to fight when others would flee? Marcus answered with steady calm. We came because you asked. No one deserves to be crushed under the Dominion. As for return, he shrugged. If we wanted slaves or resources, we'd have taken them elsewhere. We fight because we don't bow. The Valorans exchanged uneasy glances. They could not understand such thinking. To them, logic guided choices. War brought only destruction. But these humans spoke of it as though it was part of their very nature, not because they enjoyed it, but because surrender was simply unthinkable. Some counselors whispered fears. They are reckless. They will bring ruin. Others whispered hope. They are fearless. Perhaps they are what we need. Elira watched silently, her mind torn. She saw danger in these humans, but also the only chance her people had left. A new kind of ally. The next day, human soldiers began walking through Valoran streets. Civilians peeked out from hiding, curious and afraid. The humans were strange in every way. Loud where Valorans were quiet. Direct where Valorans were polite. They laughed even in ruins. They sang songs while repairing equipment. They treated wounds with rough but effective methods, and they carried weapons everywhere, moving with the calm alertness of predators who expected danger at every corner. One Valoran child tugged at her mother's arm, whispering, "They do not look strong, but they feel strong." The mother nodded slowly. "Yes, they are not like us. They are not like anyone we have seen." The Drexen challenge high above, the Drexen fleet shifted restlessly. Their commanders had watched the arrival of the humans with disbelief. These small ships, scarred and mismatched, dared to challenge the Dominion. The Drexen commander sent a message, his voice filled with scorn. "Humans, leave this system. You cannot stand against us. This world belongs to the Dominion." The reply came swift, firm, and cold. "This world called for help," Captain Marcus said, "and we answered. If you want it, you'll have to take it over our dead ships." The Valorans who overheard trembled at the words. It was not negotiation. It was not diplomacy. It was defiance. The promise of battle. That evening, as the sun set, Elira stood once more on the balcony. The sky shimmered with faint light from human ships holding formation above Valora. Beyond them, the Drexen armada loomed. The battle was inevitable. The humans had brought it with them. But for the first time, the Valorans felt something stir inside them that they had never known before. Courage. The words of Marcus echoed in her mind. We don't bow. She looked to the stars, where the humans waited and whispered, then we will not bow either. The stage was set. The Drexens prepared their might. The humans sharpened their blades. Valora's fate would soon be decided. Rin Taylor could not forget the voice of Captain Mira Holt. Her words echoed in his mind even after weeks had passed. Some maps are not meant to be finished. The galaxy thrives because the line is held. Those words haunted him. He had returned safely, escorted by the human patrol ship, yet his curiosity had only grown stronger. The edge of the map had called to him for years, but now, after hearing a human speak of it directly, his need for answers became impossible to ignore. Rin tried to continue his normal duties at the Grand Archive of Cartographers. He updated trade routes, corrected errors in ancient star charts, and taught younger students about the importance of precise mapping. But whenever he looked at the projection of the galaxy, the blank space beyond human space felt like a wound in the map. His friend Kira noticed the change in him. "You are restless again," she said one evening as they studied maps together. "You have seen the humans with your own eyes. You have spoken with them." "That should be enough." Rin shook his head slowly. "It only gave me more questions." Captain Holt's words. She spoke as if humans carry a burden, as if they protect something more than their own borders. "I must know what it is." Kira sighed, her long ears twitching with worry. "Then you will lose yourself in that search. Others have asked, and they never returned." "Perhaps," Rin admitted. "But perhaps the truth will not destroy me. Perhaps it will change everything." Against his better judgment, Rin began studying human records. He searched the archives for any mention of their history. Most files were restricted. The little that was public painted humans as a young but determined race. They had fought many wars in their past, yet unlike other civilizations, they rarely expanded far beyond their means. They built colonies carefully, defended their borders fiercely, and often acted alone rather than joining alliances. But something else stood out to Rin. In every record of galactic conflict over the past centuries, humans appeared at critical moments, always near the borders of great dangers. And always, after their arrival, the threat disappeared. It was as if humans carried with them an invisible shield. Rin's thoughts returned to Captain Holt. She had not threatened him. She had not boasted of human power. Instead, her voice had carried patience, even kindness, but beneath it, he had sensed something heavier. Humans were not proud conquerors. They were silent watchers. That truth frightened Rin more than any rumor. At last, Rin decided he could not remain on the safe side of the border. He purchased supplies, checked his survey ship, and plotted a new course. But this time, instead of trying to sneak across alone, he sent a message. To Captain Mira Holt, Human Patrol Fleet. This is Rin Towler of the Shalari. I seek permission to cross deeper into human space. I do not come as an enemy, but as a cartographer, to learn what lies beyond. I beg for an answer. He did not expect a reply, yet only hours later his comms lit up. The same calm voice filled his ship. Cartographer Rin Taylor. I remember you. Few return once they ask the question you ask now. Are you certain of your path? Rin's silver eyes brightened. Yes, I cannot live without knowing. Please let me see what lies beyond. There was a long silence. Then Holt answered. Very well. Follow my signal. But understand this. What you see may not bring you peace. The human patrol vessel met him at the border once again. It looked small compared to the massive warships Rin had studied in alien fleets, yet its very presence carried quiet strength. Captain Holt appeared on his comm screen at last. Rin studied her face with fascination. She looked so ordinary, so plain compared to the frightening legends told of humans. Her eyes were steady, her features calm, her voice firm but not harsh. Stay close, she instructed. Human space is not open to wandering. Every route is guarded. Every path is chosen. Rin nodded eagerly. I will follow. For the first time, Rin crossed the border. He expected the stars to look different, but they were the same as anywhere else. Bright, endless, scattered across the void. Yet there was something about the silence here, a weight that pressed on him. Human patrol beacons glowed at intervals, silent watchtowers in the void. Fleets lingered in the distance, ships moving in quiet formation. There was no trade, no wandering traffic, no signs of normal life. This space was not for living. It was for guarding. Why such strong defenses? Rin asked. Captain Holt's voice answered softly. Because beyond our worlds lies what should never be allowed to return. Rin shivered. Return? What do you mean? But Holt said nothing more. Days passed as they traveled deeper. Holt's ship guided him along paths that seemed carefully chosen. Rin noticed strange stations floating in the dark, ancient and powerful. Some glowed faintly with energy unlike any he had seen. Others looked broken yet still dangerous, as if asleep rather than dead. Who built these? Rin asked. Some of them, Holt said quietly, were built by us. Some were built by others long ago before the galaxy was safe. We maintain them. We watch them. We make sure nothing slips past. Rin wanted to ask more, but the weight in her tone silenced him. On the fourth day, Holt's ship slowed near a vast structure. Rin's breath caught as he saw it. A ring the size of a small moon turning slowly against the stars. It was not like any station he knew. Its surface was covered in strange patterns, glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. What is this? Rin whispered. Holt's voice came, steady but grave. This is one of the gates, the last doorway the Devourers tried to use. Rin felt his skin grow cold. He had read only fragments of old myths about the Devourers, beings or machines that consumed entire civilizations. Many believed they were just stories. They were real? He asked in a trembling voice. Yes, Holt replied simply. They were real. They came centuries ago. They tore through empires, through fleets, through every defense. And then they reached us. Humanity did not stop them alone. But we were the wall that held long enough for others to survive. When the war ended, we sealed their paths. The galaxy remembers the peace. We remember the price. Rin stared at the glowing ring in silence. His heart pounded. Suddenly, the edge of the map made sense. The humans were not hiding wealth or secret colonies. They were holding a prison. Why not tell the galaxy? Rin asked at last. Why let them live in ignorance? Holt's expression on the comms screen softened. Because they do not want to know. Fear would break them. Trade would stop. Trust would collapse. The galaxy is safe only because it believes in its own safety. Humanity carries the memory alone. That is our choice. Rin lowered his head. He understood now why no one dared to ask. The truth was too heavy. For the next few days, Holt showed him other signs of the Watch. Ancient battlefields drifting in silence. Human fleets stationed like shadows in the void. Vast archives sealed with warnings. Each sight pressed deeper into Rin's heart. He realized he had crossed into a story greater than himself, one that stretched beyond maps and charts. At last, Holt spoke again. You have seen enough, Rin Taylor. Few outsiders have. Now you must choose. Will you carry this truth back to your people, or will you guard the silence with us? Rin looked once more at the endless stars beyond the gate. He felt both awe and fear. His answer trembled on his lips, but he knew the choice would shape the rest of his life. The night before the battle, Valora was silent. The once busy cities now lay in ruins, their towers broken, their streets empty. Families huddled in underground chambers waiting for news. Above, the skies glowed with the distant lights of ships, Drexen warships circling like hunters and human vessels standing firm in defense. The Valorans could only wait. For them, war was something they had never truly understood. They had trusted in peace for so long that the thought of fighting still felt unreal. Yet they knew their fate rested not in their own hands but in those of the strange newcomers, the humans. Human preparations, on the surface, Captain Marcus Hale walked among his soldiers. They were busy preparing for the inevitable clash, repairing weapons, checking armor, and sharing quiet words. Unlike the Valorans, they did not hide their emotions. Some laughed, others muttered jokes, and some sat silently polishing their rifles. One Valoran observer, a young technician named Arlen, watched them carefully. They do not seem afraid, he whispered to Elira, who stood beside him. They are afraid, Elira answered softly. But they know how to carry fear differently. The humans were not fearless. Arlen could see it in their eyes when they thought no one was looking. Yet instead of paralyzing them, fear seemed to sharpen them. They carried it like a weapon, not a burden. Marcus paused, noticing Elira nearby. He gave a nod. Tomorrow the Drexens will test us. They think we are weak. That's their first mistake. Elira hesitated. You face an empire. Their fleets are vast, their weapons unmatched. What hope do you truly have? Marcus's voice was calm, steady. We don't fight with hope alone. We fight with will. And sometimes that is enough. The Drexens strike. The battle began at dawn. Without warning, Drexen ships descended from orbit, their massive hulls glowing with energy. They unleashed streams of fire upon Valora's surface, targeting human outposts near the cities. The ground shook as explosions tore through the land. From above, Drexen fighters swarmed like dark insects, their sharp wings cutting through the air. But the humans were ready. Their ships rose to meet the assault, smaller but faster, weaving between Drexen blasts. Human cannons fired in bursts, tearing into enemy fighters. Where Drexens relied on perfect formation, humans fought with reckless creativity, splitting apart, regrouping suddenly, striking from unexpected angles. On the ground, human soldiers rushed to defensive positions. Valoran civilians watched in awe as the newcomers fought with fierce precision. They did not flee when fire rained from the sky. They stood, returned fire, and shouted commands to one another with absolute trust. The first Drexen wave met resistance it had not expected. Chaos in the skies in orbit, the true battle unfolded. The Terran fleet faced the Drexen armada head-on. Human ships darted forward using asteroids and debris as cover, launching surprise attacks that forced the Drexens to break formation. A Valoran communication officer, watching the battle through long-range sensors, could hardly believe what she saw. They are charging straight into ships twice their size. It was true. Human vessels did not hesitate to ram Drexen cruisers, slamming their reinforced hulls into the enemy's sides. Boarding pods launched across the void, carrying soldiers who willingly fought inside Drexen warships, knowing many would never return. The Valorans were horrified and amazed. "Such madness," whispered one. "No," said Alira, watching the display. "Such courage." On the ground, while the skies burned, Drexen troops landed near a Valoran city. Armored and towering, they moved with heavy steps, their weapons cutting down everything in their path. Human squads rushed to meet them. The two forces clashed in the ruined streets, sparks flying as weapons struck. Arelyn, hiding behind broken stone, watched as human soldiers fought with astonishing ferocity. They moved quickly, using cover, flanking their enemies, adapting to every situation. Where Drexens marched with rigid order, humans used flexibility. Where Drexens expected fear, humans answered with determination. At one point, a Drexen soldier struck down a human. Instead of retreating, another soldier leapt forward, dragging his fallen comrade out of the line of fire while continuing to shoot. They fought for one another as much as for victory. The Valorans had never seen such loyalty in battle. The turning point: by midday, the Drexens began to falter. Their commanders were confused. Humans did not fight as predicted. Their tactics were unpredictable, their will unshaken even after heavy losses. A Drexen cruiser sent a desperate order: "Crush them quickly. They are fewer in number. Break their spirits." But the humans had no intention of breaking. In orbit, Captain Marcus gave the order for a daring maneuver. "Split the fleet. Draw them in." The Drexens, thinking the humans were retreating, pursued eagerly. But it was a trap. From behind a cluster of asteroids, hidden Terran ships burst forth, surrounding the enemy's rear. The Drexen formation collapsed under sudden crossfire. On the ground, human soldiers detonated charges that collapsed buildings onto Drexen armor, turning the city ruins into weapons. Every street became a trap, every corner a danger. By evening, the first Drexen wave was forced to retreat. For the first time in years, the Dominion had faced resistance strong enough to push them back. Valoran reactions. In the underground shelters, Valoran civilians cheered as news spread. The humans had held the line. The Drexens were retreating, even if only for now. Children repeated the words they had heard: "We don't bow." In the council chamber, the leaders were stunned. Some were fearful still. These humans are too dangerous. Their way is destruction. If they remain, Valora will become a battlefield forever. But others argued, their voices filled with awe. They are dangerous, yes. But against the Drexens, that danger is what saves us. Without them, Valora would already be ashes. Alira listened quietly. She had seen enough to know the truth. The humans were not saviors of peace. They were warriors. Dangerous, relentless, unwilling to yield. But in this time of despair, that was exactly what Valora needed. The price of victory. As night fell, the humans gathered their dead. They did not hide their losses, nor did they show weakness. They stood together in silence, honoring the fallen. Some wept quietly, but others placed hands on shoulders and lifted their heads. Arelyn watched, deeply moved. "They grieve," he whispered to Alira, "but they do not stop." Alira nodded. "That is their strength. They bend under sorrow, but they do not break." Captain Marcus approached the council later that night. His armor was scorched, his face marked by dust and fatigue, yet his voice was steady. "You see now," he said, "we fight differently than others. The Drexens will not stop. They will return stronger. But so will we. If you want to live, you must be ready. Stand with us. Learn from us. Or this victory will mean nothing." The council was silent. They knew his words were true. A world awakens that night. Valora changed. For the first time, its people understood what it meant to resist. They had seen warriors who stood in the face of terror and refused to yield. They had seen fragile beings fight like giants. And slowly, a new thought grew among the Valorans. Perhaps they too could learn to fight. Perhaps survival did not belong only to those who avoided war, but also to those who faced it with courage. The humans had shown them a path. Dangerous, yes, but filled with hope. Above, the Drexen fleet gathered once more, preparing for a greater strike. But now, Valora was not the same helpless world it had been. The first clash was over. The real war was only beginning. The dawn after the first clash arrived quietly, as if Valora itself were holding its breath. Smoke from burning Drexen ships drifted across the horizon. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and dust. Below, human soldiers moved through the shattered streets, tending to the wounded, repairing what could be salvaged, and preparing for the next inevitable assault. For the Valorans, the morning was surreal. They had watched courage that defied logic. Humans, fragile in appearance, had faced the mighty Drexens and survived. And yet, with that survival came a grim reality. War demanded a price. The cost of defiance. Captain Marcus Hale walked through the field hospital, his expression quiet. Around him, human medics worked tirelessly. Some soldiers had survived nearly impossible injuries, while others were beyond help. Each loss was acknowledged. Each life mourned. Arelyn, the young Valoran technician, watched in silent awe. He had seen warriors before, but never like these. Every human seemed aware that death could come at any moment, yet they accepted it without fear. One human soldier, his leg badly injured, refused to leave the front. "I'll rest later," he said. "Right now, others need me alive." Arelyn whispered to Elira. "They are willing to die to save others. That is why they are so powerful." Elira nodded slowly. "And that is why they are dangerous, not to us, but to anyone who underestimates them." Lessons for Valora. The Valoran Council convened in the Hall of Harmony. Their deliberations were no longer about whether humans could be trusted. They had proven themselves. Now it was about understanding their ways. "We must learn from them," said Elira. "Their courage is unlike anything we have seen. Their strength is not in numbers or technology, but in will. That is what we must emulate if Valora is to survive." A younger counselor, skeptical at first, asked, "But their methods? They risk everything. How can we match that? We are not warriors by nature." "Perhaps we do not need to become like them," Elira answered. "But we can adopt their spirit. We can refuse to bow, even when the odds are against us." The Valorans realized that their survival depended not only on human aid, but also on embracing courage they had never needed before. The Drexen threat. Returns high above the planet, the Drexen fleet regrouped. Their initial assault had failed, and the commanders were furious. Losing against a smaller, seemingly weaker force was an embarrassment they could not tolerate. The Drexen Supreme Commander, a massive figure cloaked in black armor, sent orders with fury. "Prepare the ultimate weapon. Crush their cities. Leave no survivors. Humans or Valorans, none shall remain." Back on Valora, human scouts detected the Drexen's movements. Marcus assembled his officers. "They will return stronger," he said, "and they will bring destruction unlike anything we have faced. We cannot stop them without sacrifices." The room was silent. Every officer understood the stakes. Every life would be tested and many would be lost. Human strategy. Humans are not only brave, they are clever. Captain Marcus devised a plan that leveraged their strengths: mobility, creativity, and unpredictability. They would draw the Drexens into traps, forcing them to expend their superior firepower on false targets, then strike where the enemy least expected it. Valoran observers were amazed at the strategy. "They do not simply confront the enemy," whispered one counselor. "They manipulate them, anticipate every move." Arelyn watched as humans trained Valoran volunteers. Even those who had never held a weapon before were taught how to move, how to react, and how to survive. Humans did not coddle them, they pushed them, demanding courage. By nightfall, Valora was no longer a helpless world. It was a training ground, a crucible, preparing both Valorans and humans for the battles to come. Sacrifice and resolve, despite their clever tactics, the humans faced losses. Small squads were wiped out during ambushes. Ships were destroyed. Even so, morale remained high. One incident particularly struck the Valorans. A group of human soldiers held a strategic hill against a Drexen battalion. Though vastly outnumbered, they refused to retreat. When the hill was finally overtaken, the last soldier stayed behind to cover the evacuation of civilians. He did not survive. The Valorans were horrified. "Why stay?" asked a young observer. Captain Marcus explained simply, "Because some things are worth dying for. Because protecting others is stronger than fear. That is the human way." This lesson resonated deeply. To Valorans who had never risked themselves for battle, it was almost incomprehensible. But they began to understand that true strength was not in numbers or technology alone. It was in courage, loyalty, and the refusal to give in. Preparing for the final strike days passed. Each morning, the Drexen Armada loomed closer. Each night, human patrols prepared traps, reinforced defenses, and trained Valoran volunteers. Elira walked among them, speaking with the humans. "How do you bear so much loss and still fight?" she asked. Marcus looked at her, weary but unbroken. "We fight because surrender is never an option. Loss is part of life, yes, but giving up is worse. That is why we continue no matter the cost." The Valorans began to see the truth. These humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of their spirit. Even when broken, they would rise. Even when defeated, they would return. The calm before the storm on. The eve of the Drexen final assault, the planet seemed strangely still. Civilians huddled in shelters. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. The humans gathered in small groups, sharing quiet words, making sure everyone knew their role. Erlen walked along the edge of a cliff looking at the stars. "I have never seen beings so unbreakable," he said softly to Elira. Elira placed a hand on his shoulder. "And yet they are not invincible. Every victory comes with a cost. That is the price of humanity." In the distance, the Drexen fleet shimmered against the dark sky, like a storm waiting to break. The humans, though weary and battered, stood ready. They would face it together, with courage, with will, and with the same defiance that had carried them through every impossible fight. A world transformed Valora itself seemed to awaken. Its people, once terrified, now understood that they could resist. That courage could exist even in the face of overwhelming odds. They had witnessed humans fight, die, and survive, and they had seen that strength was not always in size or technology. But in spirit, Elira looked across the valley. Where human soldiers patrolled the outskirts, she saw scars, wounds, and exhaustion, but also resolve. She realized that Valora would never be the same again. The humans had not just come to fight, they had come to teach. As the last sun set behind the mountains, the world held its breath. The final Drexen assault was near. The price of humanity had been made clear. It demanded courage, sacrifice, and an unyielding heart, and yet, Valora felt hope for the first time in its history. The humans had shown them that survival was possible, even against the greatest darkness.